On a winter night in ancient Norway, a warrior lay waiting for his final guest. The longhouse was silent, save for the whisper of wind through pine and the soft hiss of dying embers. This was Bjorn, the Iron Hand, a legend in life now frail with age. He had dreamt of dying in battle, sword raised, glory in his blood. Instead, death came quietly, and with it, a presence. She stepped through the door without sound. One half luminous and living, the other pale bone and frostbitten flesh. Not a monster, but not an angel either. As she reached out her hand, Bjorn didn't scream. He only whispered, "I am ready." Welcome to the mysteries of mythology, Hell. Welcome back, mystics. As with so much of Norse mythology, our understanding comes filtered through the pens of Christian authors like Snorri Sturluson. And while some of the stronger, and by that I mean the more prominent figures like Thor, Odin and Loki managed to survive that transition, others didn't. Some became distorted over time, others were quietly forgotten, and perhaps no one more than Hel. But we can't blame Christianity entirely this time. Even before Snorri put his quill to parchment, the ancestors of the Germanic tribes had already begun reshaping her. And in the last few decades, Hel's been turned into something else entirely, a powerful villain usually fighting Odin and Thor. But from what we see in the original sources, that's just not who Hel really was. So in this video, I want to explore where Hel really came from, what her realm was meant to be, how her image was twisted by history, and who Hel really was. This is the forgotten truth of the goddess of death. To get to know who Hel really was, we have to begin with her family. And boy, what a family. She was the daughter of Loki, the trickster, the shapeshifter, the god of beautiful lies. And her mother was Angrboda, a giantess whose name meant bringer of anguish. Together they had 3 children, and not just any children. One was Fenrir, a wolf so massive and wild that even the gods feared his bite. One was Jormungandr, a serpent destined to grow so large he could wrap himself around the entire world. And the third was Hel. When Odin heard the prophecy that these children would help bring about Ragnarok, the end of all things, he didn't kill them, but he did try to contain them. Fenrir was bound with a ribbon no blade could cut. Jormungandr, then just a small eel, was hurled into the sea. And Hel wasn't destroyed, she was appointed. Odin cast her into the farthest, coldest reaches of the cosmos, a realm beneath the roots of the world tree, Yggdrasil, where sunlight never touched and the dead walked in silence. There she became queen, not of warriors, not of heroes, but of those who died in quiet ways, from age, from illness, from the simple ending of life well lived. If she was truly a monster, why would Odin make her a ruler? Why give her command over such a vast domain? Maybe it was because she looked the part, half living, half dead, her very body a symbol of life's boundary. But maybe it was something deeper. In Norse culture, the feminine was bound to the thresholds, to birth and death, to fate and endings. Women were the weavers of destiny and the mourners of the dead. From midwives to Valkyries, from the sea goddess Ran, who dragged the sailors into the deep, to the Norns who spun the threads of every life. Feminine power sat at the edge of what was and what would be. And Hel was no exception. But some scholars think she was even older than that. In the earliest sources, Hel wasn't a goddess at all, at least not in the ways later myths described her. She was a place, a word meaning the grave. Not a person, but a force. Not a villain, but an idea. Over time, that idea grew a face, half radiant, half rotting, and became a character in the stories the Norse told to explain what lay beyond death. Archaeological finds, like ancient golden bracteates from the migration period, show a powerful woman holding a staff, receiving a rider on horseback. Some believe this was Hel, long before she was ever called Loki's daughter. She was never meant to bring destruction. She was meant to preserve balance, to hold what must be held, to keep the dead so the living could go on. To get to know Hel even better, we need to understand her realm. And first, let's clear something up. The name Helheim doesn't come from the oldest sources. Originally, it was just Hel, same as the goddess herself. And this is because, at the beginning, there wasn't a separation. She wasn't just a queen, she was the place. Hel was the name of the grave, the underworld, the hidden world beneath our world. And for the people who believed in her, going to hell didn't mean you were being punished. It just meant you were going where everyone eventually goes. The journey there was cold. The land was shrouded in mist and shadow. It wasn't cruel, it was quiet. Still, a place where life slowed down and ended the way it always does, in silence. In Snorri's Prose Edda, specifically the section called the Gylfaginning, we get a rare look into Hel's domain. Her hall was called Eljorthunir, sprayed with snowstorms. Her table was famine. Her knife was starvation, her bed was sickbed, and her doorway was called the stumbling block. Even her servants had names like Ganglati and Ganglot, both meaning slow walker. It sounds a little grim, but it wasn't meant as a punishment. These weren't signs of judgment or cruelty, they were metaphors. They reflected what dying actually was: illness, weakness, hunger, the slow fading of the body. Hel's realm didn't torture the dead, it simply told the truth. There was no burning lakes, no devils with pitchforks or screaming pits, just a soft, fog-covered mirror of the world above for the people who left it quietly. But let's be real, Hel wasn't paradise either. Compared to Valhalla, Odin's golden hall of warriors feasting and fighting until Ragnarok, her realm felt slow, still, and a little dull. And in a culture that prized courage in battle, dying of old age or disease was seen as second best. So over time, Hel's domain started to feel like a shadow. Not evil, just overlooked. And that misunderstanding was only beginning, because another belief system was coming, one with a very different idea of what happens after we die. So, how did Hel, this quiet, solemn goddess of the dead, end up as a horned villain ruling over fire and torment? The answer starts with a shift, a cultural collision between the old world and the new one. While the Norse saw death as a natural part of life, Christianity brought a very different idea. In the Christian worldview, death wasn't just an ending, it was a judgment. You were either rewarded or punished, heaven or hell, salvation or damnation. It wasn't the original Norse version of a middle ground, and a goddess like Hel, who ruled over the dead without punishing them, who offered no reward but also no pain, just didn't fit. The shift in how Hel appeared didn't happen all at once. It happened slowly, through stories, through retellings, and through one writer in particular, Snorri Sturluson. He was an Icelandic historian writing in the 1200s, nearly 200 years after most of Scandinavia had converted to Christianity. And he's the reason we know so much of Norse mythology today. But Snorri wasn't just recording myths, he was reframing them. In his Prose Edda, he gives us one of the only detailed descriptions of Hel, and it's thanks to him we know the names of her hall, her table, her servants. But it's also where her image starts to shift. Because Snorri doesn't describe her as peaceful or fair, he makes her cold, gloomy, and a little threatening. And from there the change only deepened. Later Christian writers pushed her even further. They didn't just reinterpret her, they turned her into a demon. In one medieval story, the Saga of Saint Bartholomew, Hel is portrayed as a ruler of hell itself, so powerful that even Satan fears her. It was also unfortunate her name was so similar to the Christian place of punishment. In Old Norse, Hel came from the word meaning to conceal or to cover, the hidden land of the dead. But in Old English, that word became something else. Hell, a place of fire, judgment, and suffering. The goddess and the inferno merged, and the original meaning disappeared. Hell, once a guide for the dying, was rewritten into something to be feared, not because she changed, but because the worldview around her did. A belief system that once accepted death as natural was replaced by one that treated it as judgment, and the goddess who once stood at the threshold offering silence and rest was now cast as an enemy. The best measure of a person's character is their actions, even a goddess's. And there's one story that shows it better than any other, the death of Baldr. Baldr was the most loved of all the gods, radiant, kind and wise. If the gods had a heart, it was him. But then he started having nightmares, visions of his own death, and everyone in Asgard began to panic. His mother, Frigg, made everything in existence swear an oath never to harm him. Every rock, every flame, every illness, all except one thing. A small plant, the mistletoe. It seemed too small to matter, but Loki saw an opportunity. He shaped a dart from mistletoe and tricked Baldr's blind brother into throwing it. The dart struck, and Baldr fell, and the world held its breath. No one could believe it. The golden light of Asgard was gone. So they sent a messenger, Baldr's brother Hermod, to ride down into the land of the dead. 9 nights through darkness and shadow until he reached Hel's hall. And there she was, Hel, in her hall of snowstorms and silence. She didn't mock him, she didn't sneer, she listened patiently. She heard his plea and gave him a single condition. If everything in the 9 realms were to weep for Baldr, she would let him return. That was it. No tricks, no price, just a test of love. So Hermod returned with her offer, and the gods asked everything to weep. Trees, stones, animals, even the dead. And they did, except for one. A single giantess named Thökk, hidden in a cave, refused. "Let Hel keep what she holds," she said and smiled. Most believed it was Loki in disguise, finishing what he had started. So Baldr stayed dead. Not because Hel wanted him, but because the condition wasn't met. This wasn't cruelty, it was balance, a law that even the gods couldn't bend. Hel didn't punish, she didn't bargain for power. She upheld the boundary, and that tells us more about her than any later legend. Not a villain, not a monster, but a queen who kept the line between life and death. even when it hurt. When the end finally came, when the skies split and the gods faced their doom, Hel should have been front and center. After all, she was the queen of the dead, and now the dead were rising. According to the sagas, during Ragnarok, a ship called Naglfar sails out to the underworld, made entirely of fingernails and toenails of the dead. It carries an army to fight the gods, and that army comes from Hel's realm. This sounds like it was her moment, her revenge, her final chapter. But she's not there. Hel isn't mentioned riding the ship. She doesn't lead the charge. She doesn't fight. She doesn't fall. She simply vanishes from the story. And that silence might be key to who she really was. Because unlike her brothers Fenrir, who devours Odin, and Jormungandr, who kills Thor, Hel was never described as violent. She didn't rage or conquer, she watched and guarded. And when her realm emptied for the final time, she let it go. Think about that. When the cycle of life and death reaches its breaking point, Hel didn't try to stop it. She opened the gate, she released what was hers, because the cycle demanded it. And then, she disappeared. Because maybe Hel was never meant to be a character in the final battle. Maybe she wasn't even a person. Maybe she was still what she started as. A place, a threshold, a boundary between what is and what comes next. And when her part was finished, she faded, as quietly as she had lived. Today, Hel is back. Sort of. She appeared in comics, video games, movies, usually as a sleek, dark villain, obsessed with death and destruction. In Thor Ragnarok, she's a goddess of death with the spike crown ruling with force, fighting Odin's heirs. It's dramatic, but it's not really her. And while pop culture still gets it wrong, some creators are getting closer. In games like Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice, or God of War, Hel is treated more like a presence, a symbol of grief, memory, and the parts of ourselves we'd rather avoid. And outside of entertainment, there's something else happening. In modern pagan and heathen communities, Hel is returning as a guide, a figure to help people process grief, to honor the dead, and to accept death as part of life. She's invoked in rituals, remembered in offerings, not as a being to be feared but respected. There's also another layer here, one that scholars and spiritual communities alike have pointed out. Hel was a powerful female figure who ruled over her own realm without answering to any male god. She didn't need Odin's approval, she didn't ask for anyone's help, and she held a kind of power that couldn't be taken away. So when early Christianity arrived, with its patriarchal structure and binary morality, maybe Hel's independence was just too much. And that might explain why her image was rewritten. Not because she was dangerous, but because she was a powerful woman. Now, as more people revisit these old stories, they're starting to see her differently. Not as something to run from, but as something to face. A figure who offers not punishment, but perspective. So who was Hel, really? I don't think she ever was a monster or a villain. She was a guide and a place for people to be at life's end. So what do you think of Hel? Do you think she was a villain or a guide? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, mystics, stay curious.